Let's get started with a conversation on hemp. With investment in processing and manufacturing capabilities, New York State is poised to be the center of hemp innovation, which with food, fiber, and industrial applications has tremendous marketplace potential. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Larry Smart, Professor of Horticulture in the School of Integrative Plant Sciences at Cornell University, to moderate this very important discussion. Let's welcome them.
Thanks very much, Kathy, and it's great to be back to talk about hemp and give you an update again.
Another one down.
So I want to start with a poll. How many of you like roller coasters? I love roller coasters. When I go to the amusement park, I just look for the roller coaster first, even if it's a long line, because I love that feeling of speed and feeling the bottom drop out from under you. Well, we've been on a roller coaster in the hemp industry, and it is not very fun for the growers and processors right now. It is truly an example of a gold rush. So I was just in DC at the National Industrial Hemp Council meeting and heard some updates from Julie Lerner, who is a commodity trader and CEO of Pan Exchange. In 2019, that was our gold rush year for hemp. We harvested 177,000 acres, primarily for CBD. In 2021, we planted and harvested a total of 30,000 acres, 15,000 of that for CBD, but another 14,000 for grain and fiber. Pan Exchange estimated in 2019 Charlotte's Web generated $95 million in revenue from their CBD products from only 57 acres of hemp. And they put thousands of kilograms of CBD distillate in storage. So in total, the current demand for CBD products only requires probably about 3,000 acres of production. You can generate a lot of CBD from relatively few acres. And with our export markets and the market for Delta 8 THC right now, those require maybe another 10,000. So we finally equilibrated the acreage to match the market demand. But that has been at the cost of the price. So we started with a high of $34 a pound for CBD hemp. This year, the price right now is $1.60 a pound. So that's the tail end of a gold rush. That's the bottom of the roller coaster. And remember, I'm a plant breeder. I'm not an economist, but I feel we are at the bottom, and we're going to start that climb back up. What gives me optimism that we're starting that climb back up to the top of the roller coaster, or hopefully top of the plateau? Bo Whitney of Whitney Economics estimates that in 2030, we will plant 9.5 million acres of hemp, but primarily for fiber and grain. I'm a professor in the horticulture section in the School of Integrated Plant Science. I've been leading the hemp research and extension programs at Cornell for 4.5 years now. We have been leveraging generous support from New York State to actively research and provide the knowledge and technology we need to meet the challenge of scaling up this new rotational field crop focused on plant breeding, and we have some imminent releases of new grain and fiber varieties from our breeding program, researching seed biology, pest and disease resistance, weed management, harvesting, grain and fiber processing, and food science. So today I'm moderating a panel of 3 innovators and leaders in the hemp industry focused on grain and fiber production and processing. I'm going to quickly introduce them and then turn it over to them with Morgan first to introduce their businesses and their outlook on the industry, and then we will address some questions. Our first panel member online is Morgan Tweed. She's the Chief Operating Officer and part of the family-founded team at IND Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana. I&D Hemp strives to be a mission-focused company, starting first with the farmer and then maintaining quality through their manufacturing facilities, where they process raw grain and hemp straw into highly nutritious hemp food and feed ingredients, as well as sustainable building materials. I&D's Hemp Campus is the first of its kind and is paving the way for a more reliable supply chain of hemp products. To my left is Maddie Mead. Maddie is an adventure-seeking entrepreneur. I think all entrepreneurs must be adventure-seeking, who has a passion for re-envisioning the materials used in construction and beyond. In 2016, he was a TEDx speaker on the topic of building a better world. Through his venture, Hempitecture, based in Ketchum, Idaho, he is a builder and innovator and is dedicated to seeing the use of sustainable, healthy building materials in our built environment. His work with Hempitecture awarded him a spot on the 2020 Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Maddie is a 2013 graduate of Hobart College in Geneva, where he studied architecture, environmental sciences, and entrepreneurship. We're also fortunate to have Dan Dolgen here. Dan's storied career has taken him from the White House to the farmhouse. After spending several years working at the National Counterterrorism Center, Dan left government in 2010 in search of greener pastures, which led him to the rolling hills of upstate New York. He is the co-founder, CEO of Eaton Hemp and co-owner of JD Farms in Eden, New York, the first and largest organic hemp farm in New York, I'll say in the modern era. Dan received his master's in law and diplomacy from the Fletcher School at Tufts University and his BA from New York University. So we have a great panel. Let's start with Morgan. Take it away.
Thanks, Larry. I really appreciate your guys' opportunity to jump on here. I'm in Brisk, Montana this morning, so a couple hours behind you guys, but I feel very fortunate to be able to join you guys online. I have a quick presentation to go through with you guys. It's probably better to look at slides than just a moving head on a screen. But I also have a video I'd like to share with you at the end of my presentation, and we'll definitely look forward to hearing from Maddie and Dan. So. Like Larry said, my name is Morgan Tweed. I'm the COO and co-founder of a company called I&D Hemp. My dad and I started this company back in 2018. I'm also currently the interim executive director of the Hemp Feed Coalition. Just throw that out there because we really see hemp feed as a necessary tool in growing this industry as a commodity. And it's something we actively participate in, and there's a pretty long road, a regulatory path that we have to go on to get that approved. But there's a great coalition of individuals who are like-minded and mission-driven to see that come to fruition. So if you don't mind, go to the next slide. So this is my family, my dad and his wife, Julie, and I just like to start with this because we started this whole thing on a mission to create real opportunities and change in rural America. We had a bunch of family friends and people that we were close to that were losing the family farm because of crazy commodity pricing and unfortunate environmental constraints. And it was just harder and harder for the average American farmer to be successful. And that's no different in New York, in Montana, or anywhere else we really see. There's a lot of challenges. And so we see hemp as a really great rotation crop for grain and fiber specifically. And it's a vehicle that really can promote change. And so we focus on our relationships, starting first with the farmer and making sure that they're taken care of and that we're growing collectively together. But that translates into the relationships with our employees, with our customers, and any partners that we can align with. That's what drives our family and our business. And I hope we never lose focus of that. So next slide. Larry mentioned that we're first of our kind in our infrastructure that we have here. And so I circled on this rendering. This is our industrial hemp campus. Those two buildings that are circled in red are existing. They are alive and well. The top left corner is our oilseed facility. So that's where we process grain products. It's a food grade facility. We make food and feed products from the seed, and we're really excited. That was kind of our start in the industry back in 2018, and we're really proud of it and continue to make improvements and expansions, and it grows as our business grows. The next circle you'll see, the bigger building, is our fiber facility. So as many of you guys know, fiber is kind of a buzzword right now, and hemp has a really bright future. with this sustainable material coming online and this supply chain getting a little bit more evolved. And part of that is there is a huge need for primary processors. And so in that building, which we've constructed, a 52,000 square foot building, is the equipment that facilitates the process of decortication. So we'll talk a little bit more about those things. But we are just really excited and humbled to be a part of Central Montana and a rural community that has opened up its arms for us and supported us. It's a town of 1,500 people. And we hope to grow into our full-scale operation will employ between 70 and 100 people. And that's a big deal in any rural community. And so we're really excited to see that the town get excited about it and see our schools support us and continue to evolve with the value-added processing that is coming to America in the hemp space. So next slide. This is a great little graphic tool I like to use because it kind of gives you an idea of where does I&D hemp fit. And like we talked about, the primary processing is really what's lacking in the industry right now. A lot of people are wanting to grow it, a lot of people are wanting to use it, but there's not a lot of people in the middle who are creating that value-added ingredients. And so that's where we find ourselves and why we really started what we did. And so we focus on the first part of the supply chain, which is really nurturing the relationships with the growers, getting them the right genetics, working with them through the agronomic pains of learning a new crop. The first hire we had was an agronomy student who came out, and he's just been a fantastic addition to our team. And he really manages, I would say, the most amount of grain and fiber acres in the US right now. In the last 2 years, he's managed over 15,000 acres. And he has seen a gamut of things since we've seen extreme drought, extreme heat conditions, and plague-like grasshoppers. So we are cutting our teeth on some exciting years. But after we harvest the products, we then take it to that first primary processing. And that's where we can incorporate the needs of our customers and meet a specification that meets their needs. Many times it leaves our facility and goes on to a secondary processor. And then that's one more step until it hits the consumer end. Next slide. And enough about I&D Hemp. I want to talk more about this product. And Maddie and Daniel will do a great job of also telling you guys how fantastic this is. But from the seed side, there's really some great nutritional opportunities here for the hemp seed. This is just a raw processing outlook. So you have our hemp protein, our hemp hearts, our hemp meal or low-grade protein, and then the oil and the hulls, which I don't have pictured there. I just threw some quick values up there for you guys so you kind of see, a comparison of other ingredients that might be on the market. I believe that without myself, without Maddie or Dan, you're still going to see hemp really have a bright future because it has the nutritional legs to carry it on into the future. So we heard earlier on the panel about the need to feed the world and having to be innovative with these ingredients, chicken nuggets that don't have any meat in them. That's where plant-based proteins has just a really wide future ahead of it. And hemp protein especially continues to evolve and meet a lot of the criteria that food innovators are looking for. So we're really excited to be a part of that and know that it will have some challenges ahead of it, but also we'll continue to grow and learn, and no one, I think, does it better than us here in the US. So next slide. As far as the straw goes, our business model is we harvest the grain head off of the fields, and then there's residual straw that's left in the field that we will then capture and make a value-added products out of. And so the process of decortication, which I talked a little bit earlier about, is essentially just removing the two components of the stalk into two separate components. So you have the fiber, which is the outer sleeve of the stalk. It's what you think of when you think of hemp fiber and rope and textiles. And then you have the inner core, which we call hurd. And many times those are used for applications. Animal bedding is a big one. Biocomposites is another one. And so our process here in Montana is we create those products so that they can then go on to further processors like Maddie and others so that they can then get value added into an end consumer good. This is just really important because this is a process in the US right now that is pretty much doesn't exist. And so for us to come online here, we've got a 5 ton an hour line, which doesn't sound like a huge amount of volume, but it's going to really help us pave that supply chain that more and more customers and consumers will start adapting this ingredient to their products. Next slide. This I want to just highlight, if you just go on the internet, a smattering of hemp products are out there. Eaton Hemp is on there because they have done a fantastic job of creating a retail product and continue to have high quality ingredients. But just there's no matter what label you're under, you can see a huge growth in hemp foods. And so we still are combating as an industry that when you think of edibles, we think of edibles, not edible food. And so we're changing that narrative, and we're having to do a lot of education and advocacy. But hemp foods is really coming along. And so we see a steady growth in the US consumer, but we're going to need to see more of that to sustain the growth that we all want to see. So when we talk about 9.5 million acres by 2030, we're really going to have to see hemp foods take off. And so hemp really is a superfood from all those nutritional things we talked about earlier. But another thing is it's a really sustainable crop. I like to say hemp isn't the solution, but it's part of a solution. And really it needs to be taken as a holistic approach. So we see that it needs less water, less chemical additions needed, very little pesticide pressure. And because of its growth and canopy, it usually can outcompete weeds. And so there's a lot of things just from the agronomy perspective that bring a lot of value to this crop to the farmer, not even before they harvest it. And so we see improved soil health, moisture penetration, a lot of things that every farmer is really aware of. We're losing that topsoil every year. And for us to be able to incorporate crops as rotation crops that really help with that, it's going to be a big deal for us to continue to sustain, our lifestyles and really feed the world. Next slide. And lastly, hemp fiber has another really promising feature. All of these customers that are listed up here in all these markets that are familiar with you guys, they're all interested in hemp for a lot of different reasons, but that's just really affirming to our industry that there is a desire and a need. In a lot of respects, hemp can be competitive on some characteristics such as absorption and acoustics and thermal. A lot of things that we see when the markets change to a natural source or a sustainable source, that hemp can perform on these levels. We're still working to be a cost competitive ingredient, but to be quite honest, we need economies of scale to really get there. I wanted to highlight a few of the companies that have already showed a lot of interest and investment and started to create the demand from the consumer side. Hempitecture is one, and Maddie will share more with you guys about that. Flexworm's one, Old Dominion's another one. So there are products on the market. Almost entirely the supply of hemp in the US right now is coming from Europe. And so especially in this time of unknown supply chains and logistics, it's even more enticing for US-based companies to find a local distributor. And we see that value coming up a lot of ways. So ultimately, we want to create that value back to the farmers, and we want them to capitalize on that. But we think that hemp food, hemp feed, and hemp fiber really is the future, and we're growing those technologies in that market base to support that. So the video you're about to see, we're part of an association called the National Hemp Association, and they put together a group of videos to go before the president to really kind of enlighten the White House about the opportunity of hemp and really how a call for help. So I hope you enjoy, and I'm here for questions afterwards. So thanks.
Hello, President Biden. My name is Morgan Elliot, and I'm one of the co-founders of our family-run industrial hemp company, I&D Hemp. In 2018, my dad, Ken Elliot, his wife, Julie, and I launched ourselves into the industrial hemp industry, focusing on what our industry desperately needed: processing. We are located here in Fort Benton, Montana, which has a long, rich history of firsts. As a famous stopping point on the Lewis and Clark Trail, this is the birthplace of Montana, and now it is the birthplace of an industry with the first true scalable industrial hemp campus. We are food, feed, and fiber. What started out just a couple years ago of just my family has grown into a family of over 30 employees, all who are motivated and passionate about making lasting change in the communities that we live in, the soil that we grow in, and the nutritious products that we offer. You have heard and will continue to hear about the amazing things that this crop can do, and your administration can support an industry that is truly sustainable, regenerative, innovative, and dynamic. If we take our campus here as an example, which at full-scale production will employ over 75 employees, and similar centers come online, we can see some substantial impact. If in the next 5 years the grain and fiber industry grows to 8 million acres, that could easily translate into over 70,000 jobs and $12 billion in market share. That's not including the farms, the ranches, and the customers that see such great impact from this wonderful crop. We know those numbers may not be staggering, but in a community like Fort Benton with less than 1,500 people in population, 70 jobs is life-changing. This town, like so many other rural communities across this country, has been on a steady decline. Fewer and fewer farmers, smaller and smaller class sizes, local businesses struggling to stay afloat. We know that we're not the only solution, but we can say from personal experience that we've seen a boost in energy and hope where we need it most, with the jobs, in the neighborhoods, and with the American family. Hemp needs a supportive and progressive administration. It needs well-funded research, fair regulations, and time to develop. But we know with a little bit of help and investment in the right technology, hemp has roots to change a nation, if not the world. We call it the goodness of hemp.
Morgan, thank you. Morgan referred to Hempitecture quite a bit, so let's move on to Maddie. Tell us about Hempitecture.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First off, I just want to start with it's an absolute pleasure to be here. This is kind of a homecoming of sorts for me. As Dr. Smart mentioned before, I went to college in Geneva, New York at Hobart College, where I studied architecture and environmental sciences, and it's actually where I found a passion and interest in sustainable building materials, in industrial hemp as a whole. And at the time, there was no industry to speak of. It was still federally illegal, and I'm going to share a little bit more about that story and how I got from there to here today. But my name is Matthew Mead. I'm the founder and CEO of Hempitecture. We are a sustainable materials startup. Not long ago, we kind of changed our tagline from sustainable building materials startup to sustainable materials startup, because what we're doing, we feel, has the potential to impact a lot of different industries. But over the years, we've really grown, transformed, and sort of pivoted towards our focus today that really is on our flagship product. Next slide. And that flagship product is Hempitecture hemp wool. Hempitecture hemp wool is a 90% hemp fiber-based insulation product that's bound together with natural textile fibers. Of course, it is from industrial hemp fiber variety, which Morgan spoke to at length, so I don't need to give any background there, but I&D hemp is actually a critical part of our supply chain in realizing this product and producing this product here in the United States. We truly believe that a healthier home means happier people and a more sustainable planet. Hempitecture did not start off with the vision of producing this product, and we've actually grown into the hemp building materials supply chain over the years through a few different iterations within the business. So I mentioned that I did go to school in upstate New York, and it was around 2012, 2013 that I was presenting at different business plan competitions. So I resonate with the entrepreneurs that are here today, sharing their visions for a startup company, and I think this Grow New York format is an awesome asset. My only wish is that I had a time machine I could go back and have this resource when I was a student in upstate New York. But at the time, 2012, 2013, no industrial hemp industry to speak of, and I found hemp building materials by really combining an interest in architecture and environmental sciences. In my senior year at Hobart College, I did a thesis study that looked at different earthen building materials. After realizing that we have this problem, a problem of embodied carbon and high energy consumption in the built environment. In fact, about 40% of our energy consumption and 40% of our carbon footprint is from the built environment. So how do we solve that? So I began looking at what did people do before the Industrial Revolution? How do we build shelter? And looked at wattle and daub, cob, straw bale, all these different natural earthen building techniques, and was amazed to find out about hempcrete or hemp lime, primarily being used in France, the Netherlands, Belgium, as well as Japan. And in this thesis study, I found out about hempcrete, and I believe that day I ran to my professor who was advising me on that topic, and I said, I'm redoing my thesis study. It's going to be all about hemp building materials. This is the future. And they kind of looked at me like, you are out of your mind. But continued onward with it, kept a broad view. But in 2012, started the startup concept of Hempitecture and presented at New York State Business Plan competition, the pitch contest at Hobart, even a contest called Global Student Entrepreneurs Award, pretty much to always be on stage in front of a few hundred people to then be laughed at and say, you are trying to build houses out of a Schedule I substance. So this roller coaster ride that Dr. Smart referenced is real. It is happening. We came from a place of not really having an industry to speak of and being scheduled as a Schedule I substance to now industrial hemp being recognized as an agricultural commodity that has opportunity for businesses like ours, farmers, and all those across the supply chain. So over those years in working with building materials derived from industrial hemp, we found the need for a product replacement. That product replacement, hemp wool, is ideally suited to replace multiple other products, primarily thermal insulation in the building envelope. Next slide, please. So some of the benefits of hemp wool and why we pivoted towards hemp wool from some of the earlier approaches. The early pitches were about hempcrete, hemp lime, which is a biocomposite building material. It's an incredible strategy, and I encourage everyone here to look into it more and learn more about it. But one of the biggest limitations of hempcrete or hemp lime, as it's referred to, is it's remarkably labor intensive, and there aren't really nominal units, meaning it is not in a building block form. It is essentially a recipe that you have to mix on site and have trade knowledge and expertise to install on site. And so that's really why today Hempitecture is so focused on hemp wool insulation. It's safe to touch. There's very few other insulation products on the market that you could rub your hand on or put against your face and still have a good rest of your day. If anyone here has ever handled fiberglass or rock wool, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And hemp insulation, hemp wool, it's plant-based. It's 90% hemp fiber. And so what that means for us is that we are using a rapidly renewable, carbon negative, ideally, when we look at the full supply chain, the life cycle analysis, ideally carbon negative raw material. We are, next slide please. We are really excited about the future of hemp wool in the built environment, but as I mentioned earlier, there's other industries that we feel we can impact. But first we'll talk just a little bit more about how our product integrates with the built environment. It installs like other insulation products. So where you have a 2x4 or 2x6 stud-framed wall that might receive fiberglass or rock wool insulation, our product, hemp wool, fits in between those studs with a friction fit system. It's easy to cut, easy to handle. You'll even notice that the gentleman in this photo is not wearing any gloves. You're not going to see that on any other insulation job site. Earlier I was mentioning the other industries that we think this can benefit. We see applications for hemp wool and other non-woven products, and I'll talk a little more about non-wovens here in a second, other non-woven products outside of the built environment, particularly within the automotive sector, as well as the cold freight shipping industry. We are enjoying yogurt from Chobani, which is manufactured where our factory is being built in Twin Falls, Idaho. That had to get from point A to point B, and to get from point A to point B, it has to be kept cold. Unfortunately, what we're seeing right now is that a lot of the cold freight shipping industry is dominated by plastics, and it creates landfill waste. Hemp wool is a possible solution for incorporating our thermal insulation into the cold freight shipping industry so that when inevitably the box and the packaging is thrown away, at least 90, maybe even 100% of that will biodegrade. Next slide. Right now is a really exciting time for Hempitecture. If you had asked me 10 years ago if I would live in Idaho, and especially if I would be building a factory in Idaho, I think it would have been inconceivable. But Idaho is where our home is. I actually moved to Idaho not long after graduating from Hobart College. And really, Idaho and the Rocky Mountain Northwest is sort of the epicenter of where fiber variety industrial hemp is being cultivated, in large part and thanks to IND Hemp and other companies that are emerging. which are critical to our supply chain. So our facility is being built in Jerome, Idaho, more so known as Twin Falls, right nearby Chobani, and it's a non-woven manufacturing facility. This is actually a photo that I took when doing trials in Italy to test the technology that we are acquiring and bringing here to the United States. So we're really excited and working towards an operational Q2 2022 date where we will be producing U.S. manufactured products from U.S. grown fiber, supporting a U.S. grown supply chain, which of course supports rural communities like Fort Benton, Montana. Next slide. So we really believe that hemp wool is a plant-based material for a more sustainable tomorrow. You can find me on LinkedIn or email me or visit our website, hempitecture.com. We'd love to connect with you and appreciate everyone being here today. Next slide. And yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, thanks very much, Maddie. So let's move on to Dan. Dan, as I mentioned, is not only a pioneer hemp grower in New York, but also a strong supporter of our students at Morrisville State College, some of whom he's hired in his business. But I want to move on to let Dan describe Eaton Hemp.
Thanks, Larry. Well, first, it's an honor to be here, and I've been following Maddie and Morgan's work for a couple years now, and just really appreciate all you guys do, and of course, Larry's become a legend here in New York and around the country as well, and has helped us out tremendously with the research that he does. I'll be brief because I know we want to sort of save some time for questions, but I wanted to give a little bit of a history of kind of how we got here, particularly in New York. If you go to the first slide here. This is me and my two partners, Mark and his wife Lydia. We were the first farm in New York to be licensed to grow hemp. We were actually the only farm in 2016 to actually grow. Part of that was because the first iteration of the hemp bill, and this was before hemp was legal on a federal level, prohibited farmers from bringing their crops to market. Obviously, as a farmer, no one's really going to put plants in the ground that they potentially would have to burn. We saw real potential in what hemp could do. We wanted to work to show that hemp was a viable and valuable crop for the upstate agricultural economy, and decided we would take the risk planting and then work to help rewrite legislation, fingers crossed that the governor would sign it before harvest and that we would actually bring our crops to market. If you go to the next slide, part of what we did to do that was we kind of built and brought together a coalition of all the key stakeholders in the state to help them see what hemp is and what hemp actually isn't. You know, there was still a lot of misperception, and there still is a lot of misperception that hemp, is marijuana, or you could hide your marijuana in a hemp field. As I would tell the DEA, it would be like hiding raw meat in a lion's den to hide marijuana in a hemp field, since it would completely cross-pollinate and destroy the crop. So if you wanted to get rid of the illicit marijuana economy, plant hemp. So this is us kind of bringing together folks to show them that hemp is actually big ag, that you plant it with the same planters and the same harvesters and combines, that you do traditional commodity crops like corn, soy, and wheat and things like that. Next slide. This is, again, just hemp seed in a traditional planter that actually had a hemp setting. We use John Deere planters. Many are kind of manufactured overseas, and they actually have hemp as a planter setting because in Europe and other countries, it was widely used and never made illegal. Go to the next slide. This is actually a picture from the New York Times, and this kind of shows just the ridiculousness of that first year, where we actually had to plant hemp seed with an armed guard present so that no seed would go missing into the wrong hands. God forbid someone plants, a industrial hemp seed. So the New York Times obviously thought it was comical and did a story on that. Go to the next slide. Part of our initial interest in hemp, and this is before the CBD craze, and we are an organic farm, and we thought hemp could be really good as an organic cover crop because it grows fast. This is probably 2 weeks after planting, has broad leaves, and could use to be crowded out, other weeds, and kind of take the place of obviously what you would do with any kind of herbicides or pesticides. So we found that it did indeed, serve that purpose. Next slide. This is again about 2 weeks. You could see, you plant it like row crops, and it's, it grows very quickly. This is the first year we had a great stand. This is all organic. So we had basically, a nice little bumper crop. If you go to the next slide. This is probably about a month in. That is a male plant, so the males tend to grow a lot quicker. They pollinate the females, which are lower, and then the females kind of grow to size, and that's what we harvest for our grain crop. But as you plant industrial hemp, what's different in growing industrial versus growing for CBD or THC is you're planting males and females together. You want that pollination to happen, and both could be used for the fiber, and the females is what you're harvesting for the grain. Go to the next slide. And this is more of a fully mature plant. This is about a 30-acre field here, and you can see the females are those kind of dark, rich green plants, and the males are the kind of brown, sort of dyed-out plants there that are kind of interspersed. Go to the next slide. What my partner and I had found as we were growing that first year, we started to eat the seeds right out of the plant when they started to get closer to harvest, and we were amazed by the taste. We always had heard about hemp nutrition. We were familiar with things like hemp hearts, but the actual whole hemp seed we thought was delicious. It was crunchy. It had kind of a nutty, buttery flavor, and we decided that what we wanted to do was create a plant-based protein company that was built off of organic hemp seeds and create all sorts of organic hemp seed snacks. So we launched Eaton Hemp, which is our company. We consider ourselves a hemp portfolio company. So now we don't just do hemp seed snacks, but we also use the entire plant, and we use the fiber, which I'll talk about in a second as well, to create a whole line of pet care and animal pet bedding products. If you go to the next slide. Just a close-up of what the female plant looks like, and you can kind of see the seeds there. If you go to next. So we harvest with a traditional combine. Some of the challenges of harvesting, if you go to the next slide, I think it's the next slide. So Morgan's probably shuddering when you see this, or may look familiar to you with what happens to your combine if you're harvesting. Because hemp is such a strong natural fiber, the strongest natural fiber, you have to go pretty slow and stop every so often because the wrapping around the axles is just tremendous. So in some ways, what comes out looks like probably what you would, Maddie would use for Hempitecture and kind of a large hemp wool mat. So you got to be careful with some of the challenges to what it does for machinery. There's sort of fire hazards and all sorts of things that, it's important to get that experience with growing, but none of it is sort of insurmountable. If you go to the next slide. What we do is when we harvest for the grain, again, this is all, off-the-shelf technology, as we say, and you don't need any kind of new machinery really to participate in the industrial hemp industry. So, grain trucks, again, combines, and all that sort of good stuff. Next slide. These are the hemp bales, which after we harvest for grain, we come in with a mower and bale it up, and just showing to scale. I mean, they're pretty good sized bales, and we take those bales and we've created our own kind of, I would say, sort of a Rube Goldberg type of decorticator, where it's not a true decorticator, because our interest is not necessarily in the bast fiber, which is the outer part of the stalk that's used for textiles, but it's the inner wooden core that we use that we then kind of put through hammer mills and all sorts of kind of grain cleaners that we've kind of cobbled together to create an animal pet bedding, which we sell now on Chewy and on Amazon. It's the, I think, #1 pet bedding brand on Chewy. And hemp as a pet bedding is more absorbent. It's got better odor control. It's more sustainable. So there's as a natural fiber, hemp just has so many more superior attributes than other products in the market. You go to the next slide. So this is an example of our hemp bedding. We have our fiber division, which is called Eaton Pet and Pasture. People love it for backyard chickens, for gerbils, hamsters, rabbits, in the bottom of cages. And they found that compared to what they were traditionally using, which is pulp and paper and other products that are less sustainable, hemp is actually easier to clean. You have to, you get more out of a single use because you don't have to change it as much. So it really sells itself. It's just a matter of, the industry kind of, and people taking the risk, as my fellow panelists here are, in trying to highlight the wonderful aspects of hemp and create products that are put into the marketplace. Go to the next slide. And these are our snack lines, which we take the hemp seed, we make hemp hearts, we do a toasted seed snack, we do energy bites, we've got a chocolate bar coming out. So we really are all in on hemp also as a plant-based protein. As Morgan pointed out, it's got all the attributes that you would want in terms of labeling it a superfood. It's the only vegan alternative to fish oil because the oil within the hemp seed has hemp omega-3s and 1s in sort of almost that kind of perfect ratio. So it's just a matter of really promoting and competitions like Grow New York. I hope. I know the last 2 years we've applied, and I know this year, there wasn't a hemp company amongst the 20 finalists, and I would like to see, if you ask what New York needs to do to kind of help spur more of investment and interest, it's really, putting money into the industry and helping small entrepreneurs who are working on either the protein or the fiber side of the business really get their products to market in a very scalable way.
Great. Thanks a lot, Dan. Lee, do we have some questions?
We do, but first I just want to remind our in-person audience that you can submit questions by visiting grow-ny.com/chat on your mobile phone or laptop. Our first question is from Renee, and she wants to know, how do we manage the environmental impacts of hemp production as production expands, thinking about external impacts like water systems, biodiversity, etc.?
Yeah, let me point that to Morgan first.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think hemp actually naturally will be a part of the solution for some of these environmental impacts that we're worried about. I briefly talked about hemp doesn't need as much water. So when you're talking about hemp for textile uses and the competitor of cotton, we see a huge reduction in water usage that's there. Unfortunately, I think the industry kind of has gotten a bad rap because many of our predecessors in the cannabinoid business were using practices that weren't as consistent with agricultural practices for row cropping. So you saw a lot of tarping and drip lines and things like that weren't necessarily sustainable practices. But when you're looking at grain and fiber, it naturally is going to start to incorporate some of those things that we see continuing to work on soil health. So as a good rotation crop or a cover crop, you see it has a really unique root structure that does some amazing things to our soils. Every farmer that I've worked with has told us that the next year that field that they grew hemp on was one of their highest producing crops for whatever they followed it with, whether it was a lentil or a pea or a wheat or a cereal. And so I think that the plan itself really does hit all of those target markers we're looking for sustainable and regenerative agriculture.
Because the cannabis industry definitely has its environmental impact. My colleague Neil Matson, who focuses on controlled environment agriculture, tells us that the cannabis industry uses as much energy for indoor production as all other controlled environment agriculture in the country. So let me turn that question then to Dan and say that we do have a lot of enthusiasm in New York about the impending legalization of adult use cannabis. And when I was in DC, it was a hot topic with another bill being introduced to Congress to deschedule cannabis. Where do you see the interface, either positive or negative, between this impending adult use industry and our industrial hemp industry?
Sure, yeah, thanks. Obviously everyone's excited about the adult use program here in New York. I am on the board of the New York Cannabis Growers and Processors Association. We have 200 plus members. I'd say 200, and 8 of the 209 are probably interested in the adult use program, and that's why they're there. And there's, for good reason, we're really excited that, cannabis could be a boon for the economy here. But again, the energy draw, some of the unsustainable aspects of the industry, we have to figure out, how to solve for that. One of the things we're excited about is that all of the biomass that's going to be produced from the cannabis plants, either grown indoors or outdoors, actually has viability. We now take biomass from spent CBD stocks and we put that into our processing, and that's what we use and turn into our pet bedding. So, we see that there is a natural synergy between the two, and they should be seen as kind of a closed loop of sustainability where nothing goes to waste. When you're producing for THC, you're just really harvesting obviously the buds, and there's so much biomass and byproduct that's going to be left over that we have to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah. So that's a great point. There will be potential conflicts if we're growing cannabis outdoors, because as you mentioned, the risk of pollination and the generation of pollen from grain and fiber plantings, as we have seen in southern Oregon, that conflict flare up. Let me turn to Maddie and then open it up to all the panelists to talk about what the role of hemp can be in combating climate change and in carbon sequestration overall. We're just wrapping up our COP meeting where we're talking about solutions to address climate change. Where do you see hemp fitting in? And then in our remaining time, I'll turn to Morgan and Dan to comment on that as well.
Yeah, thanks for the great question, Larry. I think we're actually just kind of starting to scratch the surface on the potential of industrial hemp as a feedstock for more sustainable products. We can look to other countries across the world and see them already in use and see the life cycle analyses that are being conducted on these products, and early data is promising. But that data and that really sustainability benefit gets dismantled pretty quickly when you begin transporting industrial hemp or raw materials over very far distances. Early on, when we were working on a number of buildings, we were actually bringing over hemp hurd from Holland. I mean, how absurd is it to bring over hemp hurd from Holland to build a house in Idaho or to build a house in Washington? And really the sustainability benefits become diminished when we have to transport over those long distances. So that's why, as a company, we're really excited about the localization of the supply chain and more so the regionalization of the supply chain. A company like IND Hemp is able to provide a company like Hempitecture the raw materials that they need to create sustainable products, because it doesn't have to travel far distances. We are right now working with the Department of Energy for a fellowship program in conjunction with the Building Technologies Office called Innovation Crossroads. And as part of this, we are doing LCAs on our product, life cycle analyses on our products. Early data shows that we can exceed 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide offset for every 1 meter squared of our insulation product. So we can basically replace an insulation product that has a high carbon footprint, maybe 5 kilograms of carbon dioxide emitted for that same functional unit, whereas our product offsets -1 kilogram CO2. So that's an exciting prospect.
Great. Morgan, do you want to comment on the potential for carbon sequestration for hemp crops?
Yeah, I will echo kind of what Maddie's talking about, and one of the reasons why I'm so thankful to be a part of this this summit is because we do need to see regional distribution and supply chains come up because of that very reason of, we're all businesses that don't just want to greenwash what we're doing. We really want to make those impacts and create sustainable supply chains. And if the plant itself is providing a vehicle for us to do that by sequestering the carbon into the stalks and allowing us to create a building material or something that's usable, that we can follow that life cycle that Maddie's talking about, well, all that is diminished if we're trucking it all over the country. And so what we hope to do here, with our campus and the hurdles that we're overcoming in Montana and technology and whatnot, we hope we can apply those solutions to other regionally specific campuses that are doing very similar things. And so another Hempitecture might pop up in the New York area that we can see justifying an infrastructure to support growers out there and support the downstream market for those things. And so hemp's a unique crop. It's one of the only crops that has such not just a multitude of harvestable products, but then you can have these valorization of these different things from the co-products and the byproducts, and carbon is just a big part of that. I know our company, as well as many other hemp companies, are looking really hard into the carbon monetization programs, because we don't have subsidies or really robust insurance programs that support the farmer right now. And so the idea of potentially being able to valorize the carbon sequestration and put it back into the farmer's hands is really enticing. And I think it'll help our crop to grow from the 10,000 acres that we saw, or the 30,000 acres, to the hundreds of thousands to millions of acres. We're going to need some help like that. So.
Great. Let's bring it back to New York one more time, Dan, because we want to talk about how in New York can we stimulate these markets? Can we use policy to do that? I'll just give one example. We're about to ban foam containers, clamshell containers for takeout. Can we replace those with a hemp-based product that would be biodegradable, agriculturally based? So let's bring it home with that, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, we bring in like 20 tons of fiber almost every other week, and we're bringing it in from the Midwest. That counterbalances the carbon offset because it's going through the transportation system. So we want to see that happen here in New York. In a way, the state has to tip the scales a little bit and create policies that force people to start think about renewable materials. Farmers are not gonna put seeds in the ground unless they know they have a buyer for that product. Like I said, they have all the infrastructure they need to harvest it, to plant it, to do all those types of things. So, we've been looking at working with the Department of Transportation to do hemp as a erosion control method along highways and byways. Different programs within the state, I think should start looking at how can we use the natural and superior attributes of hemp in the products that they already do, and also create policies that that kind of force the hand of innovation in many ways.
Right. Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our panelists, thank you in the audience for your attention, but in particular to Morgan, Maddie, coming out here from Idaho, and to Dan coming over here from Eaton for a very stimulating and energizing panel. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your branding is...
Thank you to Dr. Larry Smart and the panel for that great conversation on hemp. Let's give them another round of applause.